The year is 1855, England. And in the grand drawing room of Whitmore Manor, a young woman stands before her mother, spine straight, chin lifted, hands folded so tightly her knuckles have gone white. Her mother's voice is quiet. That is always the worst kind.
You will marry Lord Ashfield. You will do your duty. And you will stop this foolishness before it destroys everything this family has built.
Catherine does not look away.
And if I refuse?
A long silence fills the room. The fire crackles. Outside, rain begins to fall.
Then you are no longer my daughter.
Catherine breathes. And then she thinks of a greenhouse, of golden light through glass, of soil-stained hands, and a quiet voice that once said to her simply and without ceremony,
"Paint me as I am."
No one had ever asked her that before. No one had ever seen her that clearly. And she understood, standing in that cold and beautiful room, that some choices cannot be undone, that some loves are worth everything they cost. This is the story of Lady Catherine Whitmore, of what she chose, and of what it changed, not just for her, but for the woman who raised her and the man who never once asked her to be anything other than herself. Whitmore Manor sat at the edge of the Devonshire countryside, like something that had always existed and always would. Stone walls older than memory, gardens that stretched further than the eye could follow, and inside, a silence so practiced it had become indistinguishable from peace. Lady Catherine Whitmore had grown up inside that silence. She had learned to walk through it, to dress inside it, to eat and speak and smile within its careful, invisible walls. At 24 years old, she wore her life the way she wore her gowns, beautifully, correctly, without a single thread out of place. At least, that was what the world saw. What the world did not see was the locked cabinet in the east wing. It was not a large cabinet, dark mahogany brass hinges, a small key that Catherine kept on a ribbon beneath her collarbone. Inside, 12 canvases, each one wrapped in cloth, and on each canvas, a face. Not the faces that filled the portrait gallery downstairs, not the proud, stiff renderings of marquesses and their wives that watched you from gilded frames and seemed to find you somehow inadequate. These were different faces entirely. Mrs. Polly, the cook, who had a laugh like a church bell and eyes that had seen decades of grief and still managed to find things funny. Thomas, the groundskeeper's apprentice, who was 17 and always squinting into the sun as though looking for something just beyond the horizon. Old Margaret from the village, who sold lavender bundles at the gate every Saturday morning and had never once in 30 years failed to say good morning to anyone who passed. Catherine painted them all. Honestly, with the shadows under their eyes and the lines in their skin and the specific, unrepeatable dignity that existed in every human face, whether or not society had decided that face mattered. She had been painting since she was 14. She had told no one. This was not mere modesty. It was survival. Her mother, Eleanor, the Dowager Marchioness of Whitmore, was not a cruel woman. Catherine had spent years making sure she understood that. Her mother was a woman who had made a decision long ago about what life was and had never since allowed herself to look in any direction that might complicate it. She believed in duty, in order, in the correct arrangement of things, and in her understanding of the world, a daughter of the Whitmore name painted watercolors of flowers. She did not spend hours in the East Wing painting the faces of kitchen staff with the intensity of someone trying to catch a soul on canvas. So the cabinet stayed locked, and Catherine went on being perfectly arranged. It was a Tuesday morning in early April when things began to change. The kind of morning that England occasionally produces in spring, where the light is so clear and golden it feels almost apologetic for all the grey that came before it. Catherine was in the garden with her sketchbook, the approved sketchbook, the one with botanical studies and polite landscapes, when she heard voices from the direction of the greenhouse. The old head gardener, Mr. Hartley, was speaking with someone. Catherine had known Mr. Hartley her entire life, a steady, weathered man who had tended the Whitmore grounds for 30 years and spoke about plants with the quiet reverence other men reserved for scripture. She had not known until that morning that he had a son. She paused at the garden gate. The young man standing beside Mr. Hartley was perhaps 2 or 3 years older than she was. He had his father's build, broad-shouldered, solid, but where the elder Hartley moved with the careful economy of long practice, the son moved with something looser, more curious. He was holding a notebook. He was pointing at something on a rose stem and speaking rapidly. And Mr. Hartley was listening with an expression Catherine had never seen on the old man's face before. Pride. Uncomplicated, unconcealed pride. She looked at the son's hands, ink-stained fingers, a smear of soil at the wrist. He turned a page in his notebook, and she caught a glimpse of dense, careful handwriting alongside small, precise botanical drawings. He glanced up and saw her, brown eyes, clear. Not the kind of glance that assessed social position before deciding what expression to put on. Just a plain, direct, present look, as if she were simply a person standing at a gate on a Tuesday morning, which, of course, she was. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she said back, and then she walked on, back toward the house, sketchbook under her arm, and told herself it meant nothing, and almost believed it. His name was Daniel Hartley. She learned this without asking. It was simply information that moved through the household, the way all information did, carried on the current of small daily conversations. Daniel Hartley had been away for 3 years. He had gone to Edinburgh, paid for, it was said, by a professor who had seen some of his botanical drawings and arranged for a scholarship of sorts, the kind of quiet transaction that could be made to happen when someone with enough money decided someone without any was worth the investment. He had returned because his father's health was failing. Not gravely, not yet, but Mr. Hartley's hands had begun to shake in the mornings, and the estate's spring planting could not wait for them to steady. Catherine did not think about him more than was reasonable. She was practical about this. She had been practical about many things over the years. There was the young solicitor's clerk who had read Keats and had a wonderful face. The neighbor's son who made her laugh in a way she had forgotten was possible. She had been practical about all of them. She was a Whitmore. Her life had a shape, and she had known the shape of it since she was old enough to understand what inheritance and expectation meant. Besides, she was engaged, not officially, not yet. But her mother had made the situation sufficiently clear. Lord Ashfield, the Earl of Pembridge, had twice visited the manor for dinner. He was 31, quietly wealthy, and belonged to one of those families whose respectability was so thoroughly established it had ceased to be interesting. He was, by every external measure, exactly right. He was also, Catherine had decided after their second dinner, like speaking to a very well-maintained clock, technically functional, polished, utterly without surprise. She had not said this to anyone. She spent April painting whenever her schedule allowed, working on a portrait of Mrs. Polly that was giving her trouble around the eyes. She walked in the gardens. She answered letters. She attended to the small, precise obligations that filled a gentlewoman's days like neat stitches in embroidery. And occasionally, from a window or a path, she saw Daniel Hartley moving through the grounds with his notebook, stopping to crouch beside a plant or tip his head back to assess the light. And she thought about the quality of that glance at the garden gate, the way it had simply landed on her without calculation. And then she thought about something else. It was a rainy Wednesday, nearly 3 weeks after she first saw him, when she went to the greenhouse. She told herself she was going because the light was impossible outside, and she wanted to sketch the orchids. Both of these things were true. She took her approved sketchbook and her pencils and went along the gravel path in the rain with complete innocence of intention. He was there, of course, kneeling beside a long planting bench making notes. He looked up when she came in, and the sound of the rain intensified briefly as the door opened and closed behind her. "Lady Catherine," he said. He had found out her name too, it seemed. "Mr. Hartley." He returned to his notes. She went to the orchids. The greenhouse was warm and humid and smelled of green growing things and the particular mineral sweetness of wet soil after rain. Outside, the grey light fell through the glass in long diffuse columns. She sketched. He wrote. For perhaps 20 minutes, neither of them spoke. Then he said, without looking up, "The third orchid from the left has a damaged root. It'll drop within a fortnight if it isn't repotted." Catherine looked at the orchid in question, then at her sketch of it. "I was going to paint it exactly as it is," she said. "Even damaged?" "Especially damaged." He looked up then, that same direct, unhurried look. "Most people would rather paint things as they should be," he said, "not as they are." "Most people," Catherine said carefully, "are painting for other people. I'm painting for myself." He considered this for a moment. Then he nodded once, as if she had confirmed something he had already suspected, and returned to his notebook. She finished the sketch. She left. She did not tell herself it meant nothing this time. She was too honest for that. She went back on Friday, and the Friday after that. It was not planned exactly. It was more that the greenhouse had acquired a gravity that the rest of the grounds had not previously possessed. She told herself she was going for the light, for the plants, for the quiet. All of these things remained true. They simply ceased to be the only reasons. Daniel Hartley was not always there. Some mornings the greenhouse was empty, and she would sketch in the warm silence and listen to the rain on the glass and go back to the house with nothing but finished pages in her sketchbook. On those mornings she noticed, without intending to, a faint sense of the ordinary that she could not entirely account for. On the mornings he was there, the quality of the air was different, not charged exactly, nothing so dramatic, just more present somehow, more specific. They talked. This surprised her initially. She had expected awkwardness, the careful distance that class enforced without anyone having to decide to enforce it. But awkwardness required self-consciousness, and Daniel Hartley appeared to possess very little of that. He talked about plants the way other men talked about horses or politics, with genuine absorbed interest, as though the subject contained enough complexity to reward a lifetime of attention. He talked about Edinburgh, about a professor named Dr. Callum Marsh, who had taught him to look at botanical taxonomy as a kind of language, patterns underneath patterns, the underlying grammar of the living world. Catherine listened. She asked questions, and she discovered that questions, when asked of someone who genuinely loved their subject, produced something close to joy in the answering. She talked too, which was less expected, not about approved things, not about household management, or the season's social calendar, or the correct way to receive a morning call. She talked about painting, about the way a face changed depending on whether you looked at it with pity or with curiosity, about how she had noticed years ago that the people whose portraits hung in the gallery looked less alive than the people who polished the frames. She told him about Mrs. Polly and the portrait that was giving her trouble around the eyes. "What's the trouble?" and he asked. "She laughs with her whole face," Catherine said. "But when I ask her to sit still, the laugh goes. I end up with just the structure of it, the memory of it, not the thing itself." He thought about this. "Don't ask her to sit still," he said. "Tell her something funny." She looked at him. "While you're painting?" "While you're painting." It was such a simple thing. She didn't know why she hadn't thought of it. She went home and told Mrs. Polly a story she'd heard from her cousin about a horse that had walked into a church during a Sunday service, and Mrs. Polly laughed, actually laughed, her whole face rearranged by it. And Catherine painted as fast as she had ever painted in her life and got something real, and she was so pleased she nearly told someone. Instead, she went back to the greenhouse the following morning and told Daniel, and he listened with his characteristic stillness and then said, "Did it work?" "Perfectly," she said. He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile properly, not the small polite acknowledgement of greeting, but a real smile, brief and unguarded, and she understood with the sudden clarity of someone stepping off a familiar path that she had been walking toward this particular moment for several weeks. She picked up her sketchbook. "May I?" she said. He looked at her, at the sketchbook, back at her.
"Paint me as I am,"
he said. "Not as I should be. I never paint anything any other way," she said. And she began. She painted him over 4 separate mornings. She had never asked anyone to sit for her who was not, in some sense, performing. Even Mrs. Polly and Thomas and old Margaret. They became slightly formal when they knew they were being observed, tidying themselves, arranging their expressions into something between dignity and apprehension. Daniel did not perform. He simply went on being whatever he was in the moment, reading, making notes, occasionally tending to a plant while she worked, as though the fact of her attention was entirely unremarkable. When she needed him to be still, she said so, and he was still. When she needed to look at something specific, the angle of his jaw, the way his hands rested, the quality of attention in his eyes when he read, she looked and he let her look, and neither of them made it into anything it wasn't yet. It was the closest thing to freedom she had experienced in years. She could not have explained this to anyone, how the greenhouse had become, in a matter of weeks, the only room in her life where she felt like herself. How she had come to understand that she had been performing her own life for so long that she had stopped noticing the performance. How Daniel Hartley, who was the son of her father's gardener, who had ink on his fingers and soil at his wrists and a scholarship from an Edinburgh professor, who had never once looked at her title before he looked at her face, how he had done the thing she had not known she was missing. He saw her, not the arrangement, her. The portrait was finished on a Thursday morning in May, when the greenhouse was full of the smell of jasmine, and the first roses had appeared on the climbing stems outside. She unwrapped it from the cloth she had been protecting it with and held it toward the light. It was the best thing she had ever painted. She knew this without vanity. There was something in his expression, that quality of present, undivided attention, that was the most distinctive thing about him, that she had managed, finally, to catch. He looked at it for a long time. "That's not how I see myself," he said. "I know," she said. "It's how I see you." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was simply full of something that had been accumulating over weeks of mornings and had now arrived at a moment too specific to ignore. He did not touch her. He did not say anything that could have been measured or reported, but when he looked up from the portrait and met her eyes, there was something so unambiguous in his expression that she felt her own chest tighten with the weight of it. "Catherine," he said. She noticed he did not use her title. She did not correct him. "I know," she said again, very quietly. She wrapped the portrait back in its cloth and walked home in the May sunshine with her heart making a sound she did not have a name for. June arrived, and with it, Lord Ashfield. He came for a long weekend, 4 days, which meant 4 dinners and 2 afternoons and a Sunday church service, and any number of small, careful interactions in which Catherine was required to demonstrate the qualities that made her suitable. She did this well. She had always done it well. She asked Lord Ashfield about his estate in Somerset, and he described it pleasantly. She listened to his views on Parliament and offered appropriate responses. She wore the right dresses and sat at the right angle and laughed at the right moments. And when she looked across the dinner table at her mother's face, she saw satisfaction there, quiet and vigilant, like a fire banked for the night. Lord Ashfield was not a bad man. She held this thought carefully, like a counterweight. He was considerate and not unintelligent, and he spoke kindly to the staff, which she took seriously as a measure of character. He looked at her with something genuine, appreciation perhaps, or the beginning of affection. She did not doubt his sincerity. But in 4 days he said nothing that she would remember, not one sentence, not one thought, not one moment of unguarded realness that broke through the polished surface of him. He was like walking through a room where everything was beautiful and nothing was alive. On the last evening after dinner, while her mother was speaking with Lord Ashfield's solicitor about certain arrangements, Catherine stood alone at the drawing-room window and looked out at the dark grounds. She could see in the distance the faint glow of the greenhouse lantern. Daniel worked late sometimes. She had known this without ever acknowledging that she knew it. She pressed her fingers against the cold glass. "A remarkable man," said her mother's voice behind her. Catherine turned. Her mother had appeared in the doorway, glass of sherry in hand, studying her with an expression that was not unkind. "Yes," Catherine said. "He seems so." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "The arrangements are nearly settled. The announcement could be made before the autumn." I see. You will be well provided for. That is not nothing. No, as Catherine agreed, it is not nothing. Her mother looked at her for a moment longer, that precise measuring look she had worn since Catherine's childhood, the one that saw everything and filed it away and waited. The greenhouse lantern is still lit, her mother said. Catherine did not move. You have been spending time there, her mother said. Not a question. The orchids are particularly good this year, Catherine said. Another silence. Her mother took a small, unhurried sip of sherry. The Hartley boy is like his father, she said. Conscientious, gifted in his way. A pause. And entirely unsuitable, you understand that? I understand that is how the world sees it, Catherine said carefully. Her mother set her glass down. It is not how the world sees it, she said. It is how it is. She left the room. Catherine stood at the window for another minute, looking at the distant glow of the greenhouse lantern. Then she turned and went to her room and lay in the dark with her eyes open for a very long time. She did not go to the greenhouse for 2 weeks. She told herself it was the right thing. She told herself many things in the careful, practical voice she had developed over years of managing her own interior life. She completed the portrait of Mrs. Polly. She wrote letters. She accompanied her mother on a visit to the neighboring estate and sat through an afternoon tea, during which nothing of interest occurred, and felt the hours settle around her like sediment. On the 14th day, she went back. He was there. He looked up when she came in, and his expression, that unguarded, present quality, did not change, but she saw something move through it, relief perhaps, or recognition. I thought you'd stopped coming, he said. I thought so too, she said. She sat down. She did not have her sketchbook. She had left it in her room and not gone back for it, and neither of them mentioned it. Your mother spoke to you, he said. Again, not a question. Yes. And Lord Ashfield? He will come again in September, she said. I expect the announcement will be made before Christmas. Daniel said nothing. He turned the pencil in his hands. Do you love him? He asked. No, she said simply. Then, I don't dislike him. I want to be honest about that. I know. He is a good man. In every way that society measures goodness, he is good. And in ways society doesn't measure. She looked at her hands. He has never said a single thing to me that I will carry with me, she said. He has never looked at me in a way that made me feel. She stopped. Real, Daniel said quietly. She looked up. Real, she agreed. The rain had come again, soft and steady against the glass. The jasmine was finished now, the roses coming to the end of their first flush. A second climbing rose had opened overnight, a deep crimson variety that Daniel had been monitoring for weeks, a new hybrid his father was proud of. I think about what it would mean, Catherine said. To choose differently. I've thought about it carefully. It would mean everything I know ending. Yes, he said. It would. My mother, the house, the name, that's all of it. I know. She looked at him. I know you know, she said. I'm not asking you to argue with me. I'm telling you what I'm carrying. Then tell me, he said. So she did. She told him all of it. The shape of the life that waited for her, the specific texture of what she would lose, the weight of her mother's expectation and her father's memory, and the 30 generations of Whitmore propriety that had built the silence she had grown up inside. She told him without asking him to fix it or deny it or reassure her. He listened. That was what he did. He listened as though it mattered, and when she had finished, he said nothing for a moment, and then, "The Hartley name is not a great one," he said. "I have a scholarship and a notebook and an invitation from Dr. Marsh to contribute to his next botanical study. I have nothing to offer you that this house already provides. I want to be honest about that." "I know," she said. "What I have," he said carefully, "is the intention to build something real. I don't know what shape it will take. I know it won't look like this." He glanced around at the glass and iron and roses. "But it will be ours. If you choose it. If you choose. He stopped. If I choose you, she said. If you choose yourself, he said. I am just the part of the choice that goes by my name. She looked at him for a long time. Then she picked up her sketchbook, the one she had sworn she hadn't brought, from beneath the bench where she had set it, without admitting it to herself. Hold still, she said, and she began to draw. It was her mother who found the portrait, not the one of Daniel, that was still in the greenhouse wrapped in cloth hidden behind a stack of planting trays. It was Mrs. Polly's portrait, the one that Catherine had finally finished, that had somehow slipped from its shelf in the cabinet and fallen, and the cabinet door, which Catherine had unlocked that morning and in her distraction had failed to relock, had swung open when the housemaid came to dust. The housemaid, to her credit, had said nothing and closed the cabinet and gone about her morning. But she had mentioned it, without any particular intent to cause trouble, to the cook. And the cook, who was Mrs. Polly herself, who had recognized her own face in the brief glimpse she'd caught, had wept a little in the kitchen. With wonder rather than alarm, but wept all the same, and word, as it always did in a household, had moved. Her mother came to her room that evening. She did not shout. Eleanor, Dowager Marchioness of Whitmore, did not shout. She stood in the center of the room with her hands folded at her waist, and she looked at her daughter with an expression that Catherine had never seen on her face before. Something complicated, cracked through the middle, not quite anger, and not quite anything else. Show me, she said. Catherine opened the cabinet. Her mother looked at each canvas in turn. The cook, Thomas, old Margaret, 3 or 4 others. And then, at the back, the portrait of Daniel, which Catherine had brought inside the night before and had not yet decided what to do with. Her mother looked at that one for a long time. You are in love with him, she said. Yes, Catherine said. The words sat in the room between them, quite still. You understand what you are saying. I understand all of it, Catherine said. Every consequence. I have been understanding it for months. Her mother turned from the portrait. She walked to the window and stood with her back to the room, looking out at the dark grounds. I was 22, she said. Catherine did not move. His name was William. He was a school teacher from the village. He taught mathematics and Latin, and he loved poetry, and he had a way of laughing. She stopped. It doesn't matter. I was 22 and my father told me it was impossible. And it was impossible. Everything about it was impossible. And I knew that. A long pause. So I made my choice. And became this, Catherine said quietly, not cruelly. She was not cruel to her mother, not even now, just honestly. Her mother turned. Her face in the lamplight looked different than Catherine had ever seen it. Not younger, exactly. More exposed. I became what was required, she said. And I am telling you as someone who knows, that the choice does not get easier, that what you put away stays put away, that it does not disappear. It simply, she pressed her lips together, it simply becomes the shape of the silence. I know, Catherine said, and still you would choose it. I would choose him, Catherine said. I would choose not to become the shape of a silence. Her mother looked at her for a very long time, and then she said something Catherine had not expected. The paintings are extraordinary, she said, Mrs. Polly's especially. And she walked out of the room. The formal conversation happened 3 days later. Her mother came to her in the morning room, sat down across from her, and spoke clearly about the realities. The estate, the name, the announcement that had been communicated informally to Lord Ashfield's family, the damage to those arrangements if Catherine withdrew, the position of the family in the county, in London, in the particular social architecture that had been built and maintained for generations. Catherine listened. She did not interrupt. When her mother had finished, there was a silence. I will write to Lord Ashfield myself, Catherine said. I will take full responsibility. I will not damage the family's name if it is within my power to avoid it. Her mother looked at her. You are certain? I am certain. And if I were to tell you that I would not, that I could not, support this, that you would be without income, without position, then I will be without those things, but Catherine said. She did not say it easily. She said it with full knowledge of what it meant, and her mother read that knowledge on her face, and something shifted in Eleanor's expression that was not quite giving up. It was more complex than that. He will need to be extraordinary, her mother said finally, to deserve this. He is, Catherine said. Her mother straightened, put her hands flat on her knees, looked toward the window. Write to Lord Ashfield, she said. Be kind to him. He does not deserve unkindness. No, Catherine agreed. He doesn't. She went to the greenhouse that afternoon. Daniel was where he almost always was, bent over the planting bench, making notes. He looked up when she came in, and she didn't say anything for a moment. She just let him look at her. He read her face the way he read everything, directly, without flinching, without filling the silence before it was ready. You told her, he said. I told her. And? Catherine sat down on the wooden stool where she had first painted him. She looked at the crimson rose that had climbed nearly to the roof of the greenhouse now, its flowers opening one by one in the warm glass light. She let me go, she said. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he set down his pencil. Catherine, he said. I know, she said. She had said that to him so many times. It was their language, she thought, the shorthand of two people who had been paying close enough attention to need fewer words. I have nothing to offer you yet, he said. The contribution to Dr. Marsh's study will be published in the spring. I've been offered a position at the Royal Botanical Society. It doesn't pay much. Not yet. I know, she said. It won't look like this, and he said, gesturing calm at the manor, at the grounds, at all of it. Good, she said. I never much liked how this looked. He smiled. That real smile, the unguarded one. She picked up her sketchbook. Don't move, she said. I wasn't going to, he said. The greenhouse was smaller than Whitmore's. That had been one of the first things they had done. Daniel had built it himself mostly, with help from a carpenter friend in the back garden of the narrow house on Maplewood Street in London. It was made of second-hand glass and iron brackets, and it leaked a little in heavy rain and smelled in summer, so strongly of growing things that the neighbors occasionally knocked to ask if something was on fire. Catherine loved it entirely. Her studio was above the greenhouse. 3 large north-facing windows, a permanent smell of linseed oil and turpentine, and walls covered with portraits. She had been painting for 12 years now, not in secret, not in a locked cabinet, but openly in the studio above the greenhouse in Maplewood Street, taking commissions from people who had heard about her work and come to find her. She did not paint the great and important. She painted the cook and the schoolteacher and the woman who sold flowers at the corner of the street. She painted them as they were, with shadows and lines and the specific, unrepeatable dignity of existing, which she had come to believe was the only truly important thing she had ever had to say. The paintings sold. They surprised people. There had been a small show the previous year at a gallery off the Strand, arranged by a friend of Daniel's at the Royal Botanical Society, and the reviews had been, well, one reviewer had called them unsettling in their directness, which Catherine had put on the wall next to the studio mirror and considered a compliment. Daniel's second monograph on climbing roses had been published the previous spring. It was dedicated to his father, who had died in the winter of 1861, and to see which everyone who knew them understood. He still moved through the greenhouse the way she had first seen him, with that quality of absorbed, specific attention, as though the world repaid careful looking. She still drew him sometimes, not as formal portraits, just quick studies, pencil on whatever paper was to hand, the reflex of 12 years of looking. On an evening in October, she was cleaning brushes in the studio when she heard the greenhouse door below, and then his footsteps on the narrow stairs, And then he appeared in the doorway with soil at his wrists and his notebook under his arm, and a look on his face that meant he had found something interesting among the plants. "Come and see," he said. "What is it?" "The white jasmine is blooming, entirely the wrong month. I can't account for it." She looked at him, at the honest, open face she had painted 31 times in 12 years, that she would never entirely finish painting. "Paint me as I am," he had said to her once, in a different greenhouse, in a different life, on a rainy morning when nothing had happened yet and everything was about to. She had been painting him ever since, as he was, as she was. As they were together, two people who had chosen at considerable cost and with full knowledge of the cost to be real. She set down the brushes. "Show me," she said, and she followed him down the narrow stairs and into the warm, green, jasmine-scented light.